Cheers, man.
Cheers.
You gotta get another one.
I got one.
All right. Thanks for doing this.
Yep.
It's been a long time coming.
What the hell's going on?
Right. All right. So we are in. We're home. We're actually home for the first time together in a long time, and I'm glad that we were able to sneak this in. I've been wanting to have a conversation with you for a long time. You and I met, I guess, about 3 years ago, to kind of dive into that story.
Mm-hmm.
It was whenever I first moved to LA and happened to reach out to a company called Hover Global,
Mm-hmm.
which we've grown real close through,
Mm-hmm.
and got to do a lot of work through, and as we worked together, we just kind of hit it off and became pretty close. And now I feel like we're pretty much practically family.
I would say that.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a soft way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think in anything in life, you meet people that you jive with and you just along the same path with, and we connected through work. However, we just got along and we're kind of on the same wavelength, and
Now we just have to work together.
Exactly.
We mostly just play around, but we
yeah,
gotta
but
work when we have
definitely it was one of those experiences where we connected and it was like, hey, let's just fuel the jet, let's go, and we were both ready to go.
Yeah. Well, okay, all that being said, I have to start off by prefacing, because a lot of people won't know who you are that are going to be watching this.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, no, but they will when we're done with this. That's what I'm most looking forward to. When I started this whole conversation thing, you were hands down the first person I wanted to talk to, and because we do this all the time, like when we're on jobs and we're driving back and forth from whatever project we're on out in the middle of nowhere, like that's all we do is we just sit in the front seat and we're yapping and we're talking about life and the journey and what we've learned and what we've struggled with and just like pretty much anything. And that to me was an eye-opening experience over the last few years and getting to know you. And I can truly say now that you're one of my closest friends. Family is absolutely the case, but also just as important, you've been the most influential person on me in the last few years, for sure, hands down.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but we just leave it at that. We'll leave the bets on
that.
that.
It is. No, it's a really good thing, and that's why I wanted to do this with you. Is just as we've kind of yapped back and forth over the years, and I've watched you handle situations, whether it was on site or like we're just hanging out having beers at a bar or we're in the Arctic Circle shooting a documentary, you really find out a lot about a person when you're going through those things, right? Like you see them at their highest high and their lowest low.
Right.
And what always really struck me with you is no matter what the frequency, a high or a low, you are always you. And you take it for the best that it is at the moment in time, and you really you have a way of just going with the flow in a most positive, just happy mindset. And after hearing your stories,
many stories,
because your journey is entirely different than mine, and so I was infatuated by it. I think that was what I think really connected me. When we first met, was as I got to know you, and mind you, the first time we met, looking at you, I thought you were going to murder me.
That's a good indication.
Yeah,
I wouldn't blame you for that.
But then like the second you walk up to you, this big old shit-eating smile comes on, and you crack some joke, and then the whole situation is entirely different, and you realize how incredible of a person you are, and so I became like obsessed with that. I loved learning about you and how you became who you are now, because coming from where I was raised and the circles that I've grown up in, I never got to have talks with anybody with a background like you had, anywhere close, honestly, and it's inspired me, and it's only grown my curiosity about how we can be the best humans we can be. Like you truly embrace, from my opinion, what it is to be a great human. And so I want to dive into that tonight. I want to understand how you became so freaking cool and influence guys like me who really find it hard to even find influence in life.
Well, first of all, I'm glad I have you fooled. First and foremost, I got that going for me. So we can't talk about too much because I don't want to show. I don't want to show. I don't want to show my hand.
Yeah.
But I appreciate all those kind words, and it's awesome. And you know, I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that, I guess to sum all that up, all of you said, all that I've been through and everything I've been through life, and we could step through that. But I think the key to life is being happy and enjoying life. And no matter what you do, no matter what road or things you take, it could be you could take the wrong road even, but as long as you try to find the light in it, and as long as you try to find the joy in that situation or the happiness in that situation, it doesn't matter what you're doing or how much money you have, who you're with, whatever you have. You can find the sunset, or you could find the bright light in that. And I guess at a young age, I've always learned to look at the brighter side and always look at life as a lighter kind of aura.
Yeah.
And that has helped me through a lot of dark times. Not to say that it's any easier, not to say that you don't go through trials and tribulations, but at the same time, I don't know, I just try to enjoy every moment of it. And as long as you're doing what you want to do, not what you have to do, that's you're enjoying life. And I mean, I grew up in a household where I was a latchkey kid, and my dad.
Where was this at?
I grew up in Los Angeles, in LA, all over the LA area. My dad worked multiple jobs, and my mom wasn't in the picture. She was on drugs. She was out doing her thing, and she actually passed away a couple years ago, rest her soul. But she from a young age, she was doing that, and she'd rather do that than be a part of my life. So my dad, I've talked about this in other interviews before, and I always look back on it, and now that I'm older and understand more, I understand how many jobs he had and what he was doing and where he was going and what he was out there doing. And I appreciate the fact that he was out there trying to provide, but at the same time, I was a kid that didn't have the home life that most people had. Like I said, a latchkey kid. I was out in the park, out at friends' houses, out running around, out doing my thing. And that was kind of my childhood. And I don't regret that. I kind of enjoy that. And I will step back and say my dad was a great mentor in the fact that hard work, determination, being a good study. He was a teacher, along with working another number of jobs, entrepreneur. I get a lot of where I now know and now realize
that now a lot of your components are leaning.
A lot of my components are that.
Yeah.
And then, but a lot of it is I was out visiting different friends or different people's houses or different places, and I picked up a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and you know, you kind of learn through, or you grow through what you go through.
You are who you surround yourself with,
right?
Sure.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of friends that I grew up with and their families, and I owe a lot of that perseverance and being able to make it through anything based on going through those times growing up. So, you know, born and raised in LA, here, and had us and spent a lot of time with my dad's family on the East Coast in Boston.
You got Torrance PD coming in hot.
Well, we're outside, and in the South Bay. So.
5-0.
Sounds good.
A lot
All
of
right.
people, a lot of people always ask me. They always see me. I wear a lot of Boston gear, Boston
Yep.
hats, and my family's from Boston.
Yeah, so you would call LA home, but you associate more with the culture of Boston, or like with sports teams. Like, where does Boston fall in your heart?
Well, I would say this. Growing up, my dad's family, my grandparents, and my cousins and aunts all are on the East Coast in Boston. And so growing up, my grandfather was basically your typical East Coast grandfather.
Yeah.
You like the
You only
Celtics,
like-
you like the Red Sox, you
Yeah.
like whoever.
You don't
and
got an option.
you don't
There
have
is
an
no
option
other
there,
team.
and there was no other team. And so here I was growing up in LA, and especially during the 80s when the Celtics and Lakers were going at it, I always had my Boston stuff on.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I didn't quote unquote have a choice. And
How often did you get to go back to?
however, whenever I could during the summers, I spent summers there.
Wow.
Whenever I could go back, I went back.
Yeah.
And also here, I would say, like, my grandmother here, my cousins here. I spent a lot of time over there, and very fortunate to have a very close relationship with my grandmother here. And I would say, like, now I look back, and as I'm older, cooking and things like that. I mean,
that's the influence.
My grandmother here and my grandfather here, my mom's parents were chefs. My grandmother here was a chef, or she even worked for the school district in the cafeteria and was a cook there.
Yeah.
But I learned how to cook and things like that. So
We damn sure know how to cook. There's only one other place I'd rather spend Thanksgiving besides my own home, and that's here with you.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big influence, and
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time doing that. And growing up, like I said, it was a lot of different influences from a lot of different places, and a lot of moving and shaking, and keeping it just focused on moving forward. My dad tried to do what he could. My mom was out in the streets. My
How
grandparents.
much growing up influence did your parents? You know my parents now.
Yeah.
At this
Yeah.
point, we're
Yeah.
very comfortable with rolling it.
Right. Yes.
Can you explain to me, because obviously my upbringing. What was the contrast? Like what? Explain to me how much time did you get with your dad? How much time did you get with your mom? And then how was that upbringing?
Well, I think it's a huge difference. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I've probably talked to your dad in the last few years more than I've talked to my own dad, and his concern for you and your well-being is just second to none, and Shirley as well. And I don't think my dad didn't want that, but he was working multiple jobs. He was
absolutely.
You got to provide, and as were so many people out here in
in the 80s in LA. Like,
you're just trying to make it happen. And
right.
so my dad did what he could, and he, like I said, I owe so much to him as far as what molded me in so many different aspects of my life. There's a ton of it, but it wasn't warm and fuzzy. It wasn't like, I wouldn't say as close as like you are with your parents. And obviously with my mom, it was very far off. And it's a story that so many people have, especially in inner city Los Angeles, of their parents were succumbed to drugs. Yeah. And so that parent is gone, X'd out, gone.
Did you at what age did you realize that was a struggle for your mom?
As long as I can remember.
Really?
I mean, it goes back to, third, second grade where she was out of it, and and my dad was put in a position where he was already working and doing his thing, and now thrust into that situation as a single parent, and it was not easy. And my mom, although she was offered multiple, even from myself, multiple times to, hey, pull up on the stick, you can get out of this, never wanted to, and basically succumbed to her own demons, and just couldn't couldn't get out of that situation. She was stuck, and it's sad only because she was such a great person. She was so intelligent, and the people that knew her called her Sunshine because she had that kind of effect on people. Still people to this day will reach out to me that knew her, and she had such an impact and effect on them that
they're like, hey,
it was,
don't forget your mom.
Exactly.
Like, because
she was very much of an impact
well,
on their life.
You may get a lot of the hard work and drive from your dad, but I can tell you that the way that you walk into a room sure does sound more like your mom.
I would no doubt. I mean, she was a force and definitely a vibrant soul to be reckoned with, and I just am sad that the world got cheaped on the fact that who she was and literally who she turned into.
What ended up happening to her?
She ended up passing. I mean, it's been 2.5 years now, maybe 3 years now. She passed away, natural causes, but she lived on the street until she died, and it was one of those situations where it was completely a life thrown away to drugs. And you hear about it all the time. You hear about mental instability and this and that, and it was 100% drugs did it. And it was consumed her, and there was no turning back. And even at points when we tried to pull her out of that, or I tried to kind of establish our life together, it just never really happened because she, was like too far gone, and then she would feel guilty about even having a relationship with me, and it was like, I'd rather not see or talk to you because I'd rather do my own thing. So I would keep tabs on her various ways and keep in touch, and I was surprised when I got the phone call when she passed, but I wasn't surprised. But I think I was more surprised that she lasted living in the streets for so long, and it's sad to say that, or sad to look at it that way, but
you're a realist when it comes, like, I will say that, like, hearing all of your stories over the years, the one thing that's impressed me the most is you're very honest, and you're so transparent about the reality of the story, and just kind of take it for what it is, and either accept that there wasn't much you could change about it, or put too much energy into the things you couldn't change, and just keep pushing.
I mean, I think that's the way I live my life, even now. I mean, you give 100%, and as long as you gave 100%, what else can you do? Whether it's baking a cake or making a movie, it's kind of the same thing. We're always going to give 100, and the reality of life is, it is life, and we have trials and tribulations and ups and downs, and I try to stay, even keel, even though the boat gets rocked a lot, but at the same time, I think it's important as people that we try to stay as grounded as possible and look at it for what it is. And I just think, a lot of people, as people, we internalize and get emotional, and emotions take over, and then
way quicker than we should have let them.
Right, and then we start to make bad decisions, and nobody's perfect. We all can go out there and say we've made bad decisions, but at the same time, hindsight being 2020, we could all go back and look at certain things and say, well, I could have done that different, or I wish I would have walked down instead of rushed into that. And that's where I think in life, I've been through so much and have so many different experiences that now I think not a lot surprises me, and that because not a lot surprises me, I think preparation, and just preparation mentally, has provided me with.
You're never uncomfortable. You're never in a situation that you don't just immediately flip a switch and it's like, I'm cool.
We're good. We're good. It's all good. And I'm fortunate for that.
You should be,
Yeah.
and I will say like that's a quality that I immediately noticed when I met you, and then over the years, even though I know you so well now, still in situations that I will find us in where I'm just like, God, this is weird, like this is uncomfortable. You're just you, like you're just in it, like just being who you are, and it's an awesome thing to see.
Not a lot can shake me these days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
You've seen a lot. So, well, for you, what was it like growing up on the streets of LA? Because I grew up in a little small town, Podunk, Texas, 2A high school, and yet you're in this mecca of the jungle running around as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, people think of LA and they see the movies, they see the TV, and they think of all these crazy things that happen. And I wish I could say I had all these crazy experiences when I was young, but I really didn't. I was really protected and taken care of, and
Your
played
family embraced you really well.
Wherever I landed, it was good. I played Little League baseball. I played soccer. It wasn't this crazy situation.
So even though your immediate family was a little bit chaotic, your circle of friends, your ecosystem of friends and friends' parents and grandparents.
And my dad. And although like you think back or you don't really realize what was going on at the time, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And
so name some of that chaos in the 80s that you, as we drive around even to shoots here, you're like, oh, on this corner, so and so got shot.
I mean, in the 80s and early 90s, there was a lot of gang violence in LA, and including wherever I lived, there was gang violence and people being shot and killed. And, you know, it's not uncommon to be in situations where it was like, hey, where are you from? What gang are you in? What are you doing? And
this is before you had the tats and everything, right?
Yeah, I was no tattoos and just young, spry, running around town on my bike. And, you know, and fortunately, at the time, my mom had, for lack of a better term, remarried. And my stepbrother at the time was a few years older than me. He was very influential in my life. And during all this gang stuff and all this craziness, he was one that kind of just took me in and we did our thing. He made sure I not only stayed out of those situations, but took care of me in the sense of, hey, don't get involved. You go play baseball. You go play soccer.
So he kept you busy.
Oh yeah, and although he was doing it himself,
right. But while he was doing that, he was telling you, you stay straight.
You stay straight. You don't do all these things, and you
stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane, and like I said, if it wasn't for youth sports, I probably would be hanging out with the wrong dudes. But I was playing Little League baseball, playing soccer,
pretty good at football too.
Playing football, I played football. Pop Warner football even before that, and so and tribute to my dad too. My dad always made sure I was signed up for everything. And so when I was younger, I played every sport I could, and so all year long I was busy. So even if I had to ride my bike, take a walk or whatever, get to a practice, I was there. That was one of those things I think that I look at youth sports now and how hard they are to get into. And youth sports kept me out a lot of the riffraff or what was going on. It was all going on. Friends were involved. Things were happening around me. But because of those types of things, I was able to.
Because of the good influences, you were.
I was playing baseball. I was playing football. I was playing soccer, and all that until I got to high school.
Okay, and then so in high school, you let's fast forward. You graduate. We do a lot of camera work now. Obviously, we're in the film industry. We produce a lot of stuff together. We started a company together. We got a lot of stuff cooking in the film industry. But that's not where you started. That wasn't your first passion. That's not where. Where you began.
It actually started in high school. I was film and I want to say still photos is kind of where I started photography
In high school.
in high school.
Okay.
And what started was just a passion for photography turned into what I wanted to capture. And I started capturing news.
Okay.
Just because it was
How
interesting
old were
to me.
you whenever you got your first camera that you started using as a tool, not just as a...
I sold my first story. This is a good kind of thing. I sold my first story when I was 16. I was 16 years old.
As a stringer, right?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself a stringer yet. I was a freelance.
Explain what a stringer is
Okay,
first.
we'll go back. We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll rewind to that. But I was out there shooting pictures.
Okay.
I captured a picture of a news scene, and I'll never forget it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
The first sell. I was 16 years old. I had just got my license. At that time, I bought I had given to me a radio scanner, and what that is something that you can monitor the police and fire department with.
Yep.
So I got the scanner. I would listen to the scanner, listen to the police and fire department's calls, and because I could drive there, I could get there and see what was going on.
Yeah.
And
be one of the first ones on the scene.
Yeah. Quick break. I'm only laughing because Karim just walked
watched
right in
that
front
too.
of the camera.
I just watched that too.
It's all good.
Can I do one thing since we're kind of edit this bit out anyway? Can I put this microphone
right in front of the camera?
Well, it's free cameras.
We're professionals. It almost is like we do this for a living. You'd be surprised.
What? Then he walked in front of it again. Anyways,
God.
here we go.
Okay. Rewind back.
So
let's dive into you got your first camera. You're out. 16 years old.
16 years old. I got my first camera, and I at that time had a scanner.
Yep.
And a police scanner is a radio that you can listen to police and fire department calls. I got it. It was programmed. I'm 16 years old. I'm still in high school, but I have my license. And so I would listen to those calls, and when one was close enough, I would go there and photograph those scenes. So at 16 years old, I sold my first piece of news. I sold the story. It was a Long Beach Police Department was chasing somebody and their police car flipped over. It was actually on its side.
Okay.
And I photographed that. Okay. And I sold it to the Long Beach newspaper at that time, which is the Press Telegram.
Okay.
So I sold that picture to them. As a 16-year-old, I made $150.
That's banking.
And it was like on the front page of the Press Telegram. So that was huge.
Yeah.
And talk about motivation
right
for
off
a kid.
the bat. How long were you doing it before you hit that feeling of like, I can do this?
I mean, I would say I was out a couple weeks, and then I sold that first picture. I would say 3 weeks to a month. I sold that first picture. Immediately, I was hooked.
Yeah,
I was done. I was like,
any day of the week, at night, like weekends, like that's where you're at.
I was working at the grocery store at the time as a bag boy. I was putting. And I made more, I think, in that one picture than I made like the entire
whole
week
type
of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember I would use my money from working at the grocery store to buy film for my camera, because we're talking film cameras back then.
See, now this is what blows my mind. Like your attention to detail and the ability to dive into stuff like that is why we work so well. Because I'm 30,000 foot, and you're working with film.
We're talking film cameras, expose it the right way.
Yeah.
We're talking early 90s, and that was my introduction to getting out there. And I would say it lasted about 6 to 8 months. Every night and weekend I was just out there. I was out there. I was going in the streets, taking pictures, doing this.
Did you photo anything else, or was it just like that consumed you?
That consumed me. It was all news. I did not take a picture of a flower. I did not take a portrait. I did not.
See, it's us hit kids out in the country trying to hunt for deer.
No, not a wombat, not a coyote.
You're just
nothing.
going to find people's cars flipped over.
Fires and car accidents. That's what I was into.
Wow.
And what was funny about it, or what's funny, or the transition in hindsight of the whole thing is, the whole reason I started shooting video, the whole reason I transitioned from photography to video, was because it was so damn expensive to get film developed. At that time, you had to put the film in. You had to wait 3 or 4 days at the photo mart or go to the 1 hour photo.
Reese is dabbing in it right now, and I look at him just trying to expose and do something like.
Developing film was like waiting on the earth to turn.
Yeah.
And so I would go out and see these cool fires, not cool fires, but fires
Big
and car accidents, and literally come home and have to wait 3 days sometimes
to get the results
and get the result, and then you'd be like, oh, that looked cool.
Yeah.
And luckily, like that one I sold to Long Beach, they developed it right there.
But how did that transaction even?
I went there. They took my film to their photo processing unit. They processed it. They bought it. Anything other than that I was selling would have to go into, like I said, I worked at the grocery store.
Yep.
I would submit it to the grocery store. It would go through processing, and I'd get the photos back, and I'd be able to go through it. And how how I was kind of living through those situations.
So that was 16 through. How long did you kind of like? How long did you string?
Well, I strung a lot longer than that. I think we can go. I still string.
Yeah.
So
oh, I guess that's true. That's true. It's a hobby.
It's a hobby that I've never let go of.
Yeah.
But I did that immediately. Like I said, 6 months shooting photos, quickly transitioned to shooting video.
Yeah.
And the thing about video was, I could shoot and go home and plug my camera in with RCA jacks. Some of you youngsters might know what RCA jacks are.
I remember. That's the yellow, white, and
but
red.
I shot tape and plug in RCA jacks, and I would be able to
Rewind and watch
what I shot immediately. So that immediate.
When you made that transition from photo to video, was that like a complete freedom and flexibility moment? Like, or did you adapt? Was it harder than that? Like,
there was some adaptation there, but I think the freedom and flexibility came from I didn't have to wait to see what the fruits of my labor were.
Yeah. And
so I immediately went to video. And
what year was this?
92.
Okay.
93, 92, 93, right in there.
Wow.
And I immediately started shooting video,
and that was about the time that news, even the way it was being the job that you were doing was kind of being created and cultivated during that culture, that underground movement of stringing and jumping on big news that comes out and getting there before the news crews ever get there.
Right.
That subculture that now you've got Netflix series of and like movies about.
Right. So to go back to to explain to what that kind of moved into was the job of a stringer and what a stringer is. What's a stringer? And so a stringer is somebody who is freelance. You don't work for any news station. You don't have any ties to anybody but yourself.
Any company
you might work for a company. There was a couple companies out there that
they would have a couple stringers on the payroll and
The reason why it was called a stringer was because the news crews that worked for the news stations at night, they would go home.
Okay.
And then so overnight, let's say they went home at 6. I might not be accurate, but for lack of a better explanation, let's say they went home at 6 and they didn't come back till 6 in the morning. Well, overnight, there's a ton of news that happens. Yeah. And so the stories would be there, but how do you tell those stories?
So you string
those together.
Okay.
Or the video that we would provide would string those stories together.
Okay.
And that's why you were called the stringer.
That makes
Because
sense.
you were freelance and you were out in the street,
Yep.
and you were covering those gaps.
Okay.
And so at that time, late 90s, it was nobody out on the street but stringers in the middle of the night. And you might have had at the most 10 guys out there.
Okay.
And those guys were out there covering news, and we were all in competition. Sometimes you were there by yourself. Sometimes there was...
So the whole goal was to beat the rest of the dudes that are out there to the scene.
Yes, and get the money shot.
Yeah.
And then deliver that
Because
shot to the news.
Your style of even filming was immediate apparent to me. I was so drawn to it as a fellow cinematographer myself. You have such a documentary style of just run and gun, get the shot. Like, you understand framing, you understand lighting enough to get by, and as long as you get there and you've got decent enough audio and a good picture, the story's going to tell itself. It's
Right.
just you got to get there and be ready for it. And that to me, it was like something that I was so drawn to. The second we started filming together, I was like, this guy just grabs the camera and goes. It's like, he's there, he's beating me.
That comes from the news background, and I
Yeah.
mean, you're by yourself, so you don't have anybody doing lighting for you. You don't have anybody doing audio. You control the camera all by yourself, and so
Yeah, you're a one-man band.
you're a one-man band, and not more important than that, you have one opportunity
Oh,
to get
right.
the shot.
That's so true.
So,
That's so true. Yeah, you
if
have to
you-
almost anticipate what is
Yeah.
happening.
If you miss
to
it,
get
you
what you-
missed it, and there's no redoing it. And that's different from film and TV, right?
Yeah.
There's take 2, take 3, let's do it again.
Nah.
Michael Bay's blown it up 10 times
Right,
when you
right.
see it on Transformers and this and that.
Yeah.
Where if you're out there in the news, and I honestly didn't know at the time, but I love that I learned that way. Because I think it helps me to
100.
this day
100%.
to the point where I only have that one opportunity. If we're shooting,
Yep.
I don't care if we're shooting COVID stuff and we're up in a helicopter, I know I got one chance
Yeah.
and I'm going to nail it. Or
Yeah.
we're in Alaska, I'm going to try and nail it.
Yep.
And that's where I cut my chops in shooting.
Yeah, you
was
were so
on the
natural
streets.
for you. It just that became part of the.
You had
your
to.
rhythm.
There was no other. I mean, if you didn't get the shot, you didn't get the sale.
You ain't getting food. Yeah,
Yeah,
you ain't
exactly.
getting dinner.
You ain't gonna
Like,
eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Huh. And so I that's where I learned how to shoot, and that's where kind of
where your style was developed.
it developed me there. And don't get me wrong, I'm the first to now look back and say, hey, let's take our time, let's light it,
Yeah,
let's do
that's
this,
true.
let's do that.
That's true.
But I don't
But you
always.
know you can always lean on that.
It's
You
not the
know
end of the
you know.
world, and I know that we can grab a camera and get to pushing.
Yeah.
And so I also am very much of a teeter-totter in that, where if it swings that direction, hey, let's go
Keep
for it.
pushing,
Let's do it.
Yeah.
But that's where I really learned. And I tell people all the time, that was my introduction into being a cinematographer, was on the street. And if anybody can learn from the street, that's crazy. I wouldn't wish
That's
that on
diving in-
anybody.
diving in head first.
Yeah, with both feet in the deep end with sharks.
What? Yeah. So what kept you so hungry and sticking with it? Why do you feel you were so drawn to stringing?
I think it was just telling the story, and I think it was the interest of the story, and I think there was a lot of, hey, the story isn't being told, or there's an opportunity, especially because.
Was it a challenge at all? To be
Oh,
there
of course,
first
it's a
and,
challenge to be there first. It's a challenge to be in the know. It's a challenge to share the news.
Yep.
And the reality of it is a lot of these stories, if you don't get there, that story isn't told.
at all.
And a lot of the news that I covered was in the inner city.
In the areas where those stories
Weren't being told. And it becomes kind of a civic duty, like,
Yeah.
hey, there's this and that is happening every night, and if somebody's not there to capture it, it probably won't be told.
Right.
And then people think that it's not of the norm when it is. And so I just think it was a genuine interest in news and a genuine interest in sharing the information with the world. And it was an opportunity to go out there and do that drew me to being a stringer.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge,
Uh-huh.
and it was, everything about it was just stacked up against you.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it, it's never the best condition. The police want to kick you out,
Right.
this and that. I mean, you're
I
battling
think
all
that's
kinds
where,
of...
I think that's where you get a lot of your charm too. Is I just imagine all of the situations you've been in life, and it's like you can just work your way out of whatever. Like you can make a friendly situation out of any terrible environment, and you're humble about it, and you just smile and you ask permission. If you don't get it, you figure it out.
Yeah. Diplomacy definitely helps in the stringing business.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of people don't want you there, and especially during those times, it was like, get out of here,
Yeah.
go up the hill, down the street, and this
Right,
and that. And
right.
so,
And it's your job to get the shot.
Yeah, you just want to get the shot, and you just want to do it. And
So how long did that hobby have to get set aside to do? Did you sustain your living doing that? How did
yes
that
and
work?
no. I mean, I did it while I was working at the grocery store, while I was in high school, and then shortly after that, I got hired on the fire department.
Okay.
And right when I got hired on the fire department, I kept on stringing.
So
I was
now
doing
you're just
both.
double dipping.
Not so much double dipping. So the fire
Okay.
department in Los Angeles area is you work 10 days a month. And so
Which fire department?
I worked in Compton Fire Department. So City of Compton Fire
Sure, a lot of
Department.
people have heard of Compton.
Maybe. Small little city.
A little suburb.
Little
of LA.
suburb of LA.
Yeah.
Um,
How long did you work in the Compton area?
I worked in Compton for almost 20 years.
Wow.
But during those 20 years, I stayed, I'd say for the first 10 years, I was consistently still stringing and
Really?
working in the fire department. Because the fire department, you only work 10 days a month. Those other 20 days, you better find something to keep you busy, or else you're going to be in trouble. Or else I was going to be in trouble.
Right.
And so I continued to be a stringer, continue to shoot news, continue to work part-time on an ambulance. And
So you were a paramedic and a fireman.
yeah, I became a paramedic after I joined the fire department. So I got on the Comp Fire Department.
What age?
I was December of '95 when I got hired there. So I was 19, right out of high school. And I got hired there, went straight to paramedic school, finished my probationary year, and at all that time I was still stringing.
That's awesome.
I was still shooting videos, still stringing.
Yeah. Why did you pick? Why firefighting? Why were you drawn that way? When did that come on? When were you?
I think the fire service in general is the camaraderie of it, the teamwork of it, the aspect of the challenges that come up in the fire service. That's what drew me to it, and the reality of it is that the way that the fire service approaches and provides its service is different than a lot of service industries.
Okay.
And, why not be a doctor? Why not be this? Why not be that? Well, I feel like even the police department, even being a doctor, being just a paramedic, it's very, very different than the fire department. The fire department's very challenging in the sense of whatever comes up or whatever you're hit
Whatever
with,
you get dispatched on,
you never
figure it
know
out.
what it's going to be.
Yep.
And you have to wear all those hats.
Yeah.
You have to
So you love the challenge in adapting to whatever you showed up on scene to.
jack of all trades, master of none. I mean, it could be you showed up and you helped somebody jump their car, to you help somebody that's shot, to I mean, the whole block's
To a
on
plane
fire,
crashing
to a
into
plane
a house.
crashing into a house,
Yeah.
to a wildland fire here in Southern California where the whole city's burning down.
Yeah.
So those types of challenges and those types of things that are put before you, I mean, you can only imagine in 20 years of
What you see. No, yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I always pick your brain when we're driving on long drives about, like, all right, give me another story that I hadn't heard yet of what's happened. And one that I want to hit on is that you've had a reality TV show about you being a fireman.
Yes, yeah.
Of all people.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly fascinating because I don't have very many friends that have had a reality TV show about them, much less doing something cool like being a fireman and being in charge of other firemen.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
So, elaborate a little bit about
I mean,
that. Come on.
well, I think the way it
don't
all
be so humble.
the way it all kind of came about was, like mentioned before, I was still shooting the whole time.
Yeah, so you were stringing while you were
stringing,
fighting.
and stringing turns into, hey, my buddy has a bar mitzvah. Can you shoot it?
Yep.
Can you shoot a music video?
Yep.
Can you shoot this?
Yeah, you
and
do
so,
20 extra years in LA or in the
Yeah,
fire
yeah,
department
yeah,
while
you know,
you're growing on both sides.
people are always asking you to shoot something, and so shooting something turns into, you have friends that are in that business, and I was shooting music videos and shorts and documentaries while I was on the fire department.
Yep.
And then you get with some creative people that say, hey, my interest is, let's shoot something about the fire department.
Yeah.
And, well, let's follow you around for a couple weeks and let's see if we can make a story out of it. Yeah.
Where were you at in your career when that conversation began? Okay, I think we may have some sort of series here we could produce. Could be something unique. It's never really been done before. How was your progression as a fireman, and where were you at that point in time? Where did you find yourself as a professional within that industry?
At that time, I was a deputy chief, which is the second in command.
Okay.
So, in the fire service, hierarchy, there's captains, there's battalion chiefs, deputy chief, fire chief in our organization.
Okay.
I was actually the deputy chief at that time. And so I was on the hierarchy.
Yeah, you were working your way up.
I was working my way up. I was definitely in the larger capacity of responsibility. So I had a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, it was one of those things where I was just part of the team.
Yep.
And when this whole thing came about, I was able to facilitate a lot of it and bring camera crews with me and things like that because I was at that level. So a lot of the progression of the reality show was because I was able to keep a camera crew with me the whole time. Yeah. And they were able to follow me to a number of different situations, including plane crashes, fires, shootings, you name it. And so,
where was this aired?
On BET, Black Entertainment TV. There was 10 episodes, and it was on TV.
You're so casual about just delivering that info to me that I remember the first time I ever asked you, I was like, you did what? Like, just sometimes the shit you say doesn't sound like you're even being honest with yourself, but it's what you experience. It's the life you live.
It was 10 episodes. It was on TV, and you live through it. And if I had to go back, would I change some of it? Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it was full access to my life and this and that, and I can understand how I don't understand how some of these reality shows go on for so many seasons. But I mean, the goal of the whole situation was to grow the public's knowledge of what we did in the fire service, and it's more than just...
Even in that, made me most interested in the whole series was that it gave the public an insight of what happened in your area.
Yeah, and
it wasn't just being a firefighter. It was, you're a firefighter in Compton.
Yeah, and I think that was the whole goal, is we were doing what we could to shed light on the job and the area and the trials and tribulations and whatever happens. Yeah. And that in itself is, I mean, we could sit here and I think there's a whole nother episode about the fire department. There's a whole another episode about Compton. Yeah. I mean, we can get deep into driving around Compton and
seeing the things you saw,
seeing the things I saw, or just
working the politics of what what being a part of a government-funded organization is.
Or just talking about Compton in general, and I mean, I've taken your parents on the Compton tour.
Anyone who watches this, we need to start a company where this guy drives around in an 18-passenger van and just gives a Compton tour, because it's incredible. The knowledge and what you've even seen just driving around, like being in Compton for 20 years as a fireman, the crazy shit you saw throughout that 20 years is a movie in its own right. Much less the rest of your life, but those 20 years, it just like anytime we ever pass through it, you've got some story on this corner or this house. Or
And the reality of it is the guys are still there doing it to this day, and there's guys that did it longer than me, and it's a thankless job, and it's one of those situations where these guys are out there just knocking it down every day. And
do you miss it?
I miss the guys. I miss aspects of the job. At the same time, I look at where we're at or where I'm at today. And because of where I'm at in my life for certain things, and we'll transition into some of those things, but I'm happy to be where I'm at.
Yeah. So in hindsight, and I knew that answer. You always, you're always optimistic. You always see the best side of everything. I mean, I know you now, and I know that you wouldn't want to change anything with where you're at in life.
I'm happy where I'm at, and I can't say that those guys aren't on my mind, or when there's an incident that happens there, something that goes on.
You still listen to the Scanners.
I still listen to the Scanners and still talk to those guys and still keep in the know. I'm still stringing.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term
upgrade
or time.
String.
Upgrade.
Come on.
Upgrade.
I think you're doing a little more than stringing nowadays.
But it's
so was it?
I think that's a trick question for me. Do I miss it?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think it's the best way, and to be the most non-decisive and to not answer a question, I think it kind of goes both ways, and I could support and give a debate for both sides of the story.
What was your least favorite part about it? Was it the hours, or was it the politics? Was it the what?
I think the least favorite part was trying and knowing what needed to be done, but you couldn't do it because of lack of funding, manpower, and or just the government aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because, you need 3 more fire stations there, 3 more fire engines, and you need staffing at this level, and you need to pay guys this level.
Right.
And I think
was that a hard struggle, being as you worked your way up this ladder, and now you're in charge of guys, you're in charge of morale. For you, how hard was it to manage those assets and
I think that's where it slaps you in the face. It's just like being a parent in the sense of you want to provide for your kids and you want them to have the best school and the best everything, but you can only do what you can.
Yeah.
And so being a supervisor in the fire service is a lot like that, where you want everything, but you just can't get anything because of, you're limited in funds and budgets and this and that, and it all sounds good, but you can't. And
y'all are where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
The hard part. And you're literally where the rubber meets the road.
And that was a hard part, and
makes sense.
The highlights of it are just seeing these guys, the camaraderie and the selfless acts of bravery, for lack of a better term, guys putting their life on the line to save others, or watching daily guys just selflessly
running into fires and
just get crushed,
jumping into cars,
mentally get crushed, physically get crushed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just all day, every day. That's what your profession is at that point.
Is bearing the weight of the world's reality.
Right, and I don't think you could pay a guy or girl enough to do that. just as I don't think you can prepare mentally to do that job. And it is what it is. It's a tough job, and it's so needed in society, but yet so underfunded and underutilized, or people don't realize what their needs are until they need them.
Yeah.
And then they'll say, why did it take the fire department so long to get here? Well, guess what? You underfunded the fire department. We could have had one on the corner.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that, because it kind of strikes a little chord home on my end. And a lot of people don't know this, but as a family, our house burned down when we were kid. I was a kid.
I know this story.
Yeah, yeah, and we lost literally everything.
Right.
Like we and I remember when our volunteer fire department, when I showed up that Sunday as a 12-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid at the time, and seeing our seeing a guy that I normally see wear a mechanic shirt, fixing my parents' car, now standing in what used to be my living room, putting out the rest of our house. It was such an eye-opening experience to the mindset of how you flip that switch and just go and do the job that you do. And then also the follow-up after the fire is over. Like all of the firemen that came and talked to my family, and like obviously they're friends, and them from the community, because there it was more of a volunteer situation.
Right.
But the job wasn't just being a fireman.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think that is a job, and it's so much less than that. And especially in Southern California, where Southern California not only goes to fires, and they are a professional fire department, not volunteer, and nothing against volunteers, because the majority of the U.S. is volunteer fire departments. But in Southern California, 80% of the calls the fire department's going to are medical related.
Right.
So when somebody calls 911 and they have a heart attack or the chest
fire
pain,
truck showing up because the paramedics on the
fire
on the
truck
truck
showing up because they're paramedics. And so when you get that situation, or you have that happening, it's a different type of situation. And you can't prepare for that. And like I said, I think to sum up the fire service, or sum up being a firefighter in one line, is your typical day at work is somebody's worst day of their life.
Yeah.
And you see that every day you go to work.
Literally every morning, or every
day you go to work, you are going to experience that day for you is the worst day, or your benchmark.
Absolutely.
But guess what? They went to that day, and they went to somebody else's house the next day, and somebody else the next day.
Absolutely. I still remember Mr. Crestus showing up and talking to my family about everything. They'll either kick over the walls to make sure it's safe, and then we can go in and sift through the ashes and figure, that was
a traumatic moment in your life, but to those guys, whether volunteer, that's just a
job,
a regular day. I almost would say to somebody, when you go to the restroom, you take a pee. How often do you do that? Well, just think of experiencing somebody's worst day that often. Or putting gas in your car that often.
Right.
You experience somebody's worst day.
But you didn't even just focus on residential stuff. You eventually grew out to fighting wildfires across the state. Right?
Yeah. I mean, Southern California is kind of unique in the fact that the interoperability and the mutual aid system is ahead of most, where when somebody needs help, everybody
you're
goes.
shifting and you're moving.
Yeah.
Because
So
you even went down for the hurricanes and stuff. Like, you came down my way.
Yeah. I mean, the way the fire department's set up with help is that somebody needs help, whether it's Texas, whether it's New York, whether it's whatever. There's a system in place to push resources throughout the states and within the states to help these people and get highly qualified, highly trained people there in a moment's notice. Yeah. And that's what the fire service does best. It's just, if you really take a look at it, or really put a microscope over it, it's just guys are doing such great work that is going just kind of unseen and unappreciated every day, and it's like they're that particular business, for lack of a better term, is just underappreciated by so many. And I'm just happy to have that experience and happy to have the knowledge and happy to have done it for the time that I did it. And it has helped me in my career now so much. I mean,
you still use you're using scanners now.
Well, not only, I don't even want to say from the scanner standpoint. I'm just saying from the standpoint of the way the fire service handles preparation for events.
Gotcha.
The way the fire service is in how you handle events. We've been on film sets. We've been on situations where it seems like all hell's breaking loose, and it's like, hey, nobody's dying here. Absolutely. Let's relax.
Absolutely.
Let's take a step back and look at the big picture.
I have never seen you rattled once in the years I've known you. And we've been in some pretty fishy situations.
That's the fire service that is instilled in you, and the reality of it is anything I'm doing now and today, especially with film and TV, nobody's gonna die. We might miss a shot, but nobody's gonna die, and so that's my approach to it. And but on a different aspect of it, the highly trained and ability to prepare for anything, and that's why there's all these cases. That's why we have all these things, because you're ready for anything to happen and be able to handle it there. And so I've really picked that up in my filmmaking and my production career is being preparation. And
I agree. That's what you kill it at. Like
the fire service is about that. It's like prepare for everything and prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
One is none and
two is one and one is none. So you have two of everything. If it breaks, you'll be good.
And you're always prepared.
If you prepare, preparation prevents piss poor performance. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. And that's like, British Special Forces, the 7 Ps, and the fire service adopts that, stuff like that. So, I mean, that's that whole, I mean, we can go deep into stories, and that's a whole nother episode on the fire service.
So, fire department for 20 plus years, you've seen a lot of different shit, and you experience a lot of different types of personalities and fought those personalities and grew with those personalities, and you've got a family. You got a fireman family. How did you progress to where you are now? Where did you phase out of the fire department? How did that go?
It didn't go well. Let's just leave it at that. A lot of stuff went down. A lot of politics went down. A lot of big situation. I would say best left for a segment on its own. That aspect of my life and the transition was probably one of the hardest parts of my life. And so it didn't end well. A lot of politics, a lot of stuff to be talked about. I mean,
we can get into that at a later time. But to me, what interests me the most about what I understand of that transition in your life now is how whenever things didn't go the way you could have ever dreamed up they would go, you took it with a grain of salt and you reevaluated where you were in life and you made the best of what the situation was.
Oh, definitely. I had to keep pushing. I at this point, I had 2 kids. Sarah was pregnant with Ty at the time during this transition. And so it was one of those situations where you don't have a choice. You have to keep it pushing and you have to kind of just continue with life. And I'm a big believer in life isn't always what you write it to be, and life isn't always what you want it to be.
I know a lot of good writers, and they couldn't even write your story. so yeah, I can totally understand why you're taking that stance.
I mean, it's one of those situations where you grow through what you go through. And I went through a lot, and that whole period of life was...
Would you say that point in your life of leaving the fire department was the most impactful for who you are now?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that at
You
all.
were already prepared for... You were already the person that you needed to be to get through that experience.
I would say that there are certain aspects of what I went through during that time that have molded me as a person, but I wouldn't say that one event is who I am today. I would say that a lot of what I went through in life prepared me for that situation.
Yep.
And I think in life in general, we lean on our support network and lean on the people around us when we go through certain things.
Yeah.
I would say that my friends and family, especially Sarah, who's my wife, having close friends, family, that's how I made it through those situations. Yeah. And I cannot give Sarah enough kudos for, and I'm not just saying that to get some brownie points. I cannot give Sarah enough kudos for the support that I received, and her family, her dad, her mom, her brother, my good friends, and I would say my support network was incredible to empower during the transition to empower me to know that I could do whatever I wanted. Yeah. And ultimately,
you left something that was, for all intents and purposes, your identity. Like you embraced the fire department. Like that was what made you Marcel Melanson.
Yeah. I would say that, yes, and to a lot of people, they would think that. And
I know you're very multifaceted. Like, I know you enough now to know that you wear a lot of different hats. Right now, it may be a Panavision one, it may be a Boston Red Sox one in the morning, but...
I would say from the outside looking in, some people would say they thought I was the fire department and the fire department was me.
Yeah.
Granted,
you had a reality show about being a fireman.
Yeah, but, I think deep down inside, and I personally never felt like that was all
that was
I
fully
was,
you. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And
well, everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. And the reality of it is after it's all said and done, and after everything happens, and the trials and tribulations and craziness and everything that went down, when you come back and look at it, I was able to, quote unquote, continue my life or keep going because it wasn't
your whole life.
It wasn't my whole life.
You know.
And I had to pivot and reinvent myself and really look at, and I think the most important thing for me was being able to provide for my family.
Yeah, because at that point you had a big family.
Oh yeah, I had 2 kids and another one on the way. Yeah. And
let's because this is an important thing that I want to make sure that you get to tell. Through transitioning out of the fire department, during that chaotic moment in your life, what year was this?
2011. Okay. 2010, 2011.
Yep. So at that point in time, you're now removing yourself from a bond of close, you could call them family, people that you work with every day, right? You're removing yourself from that situation, and now you've got 3 sons.
Well, I had 2 at the time.
2 at the time, right? Third on the way. Third on the way. And for that type of transition to happen, where was your head at in taking care of the reality that's about to exist? Like how having something as secure as a government job, for lack of a better term, as you would say, to now going back to freelancing and figuring out how to survive for your family.
I mean, I guess the reality of that was I was never worried about that.
Okay.
I knew that I had skills and abilities that I could lean on. And I just have to go back and say, the family, my friends, Sarah's parents,
Yeah.
and even Emily, my ex-wife, and the
Right.
boys' kids. I mean, the amount of support that I had with that foundation, I never
You were never worried about the next
worried
step.
about
You knew you
that
had.
part of it.
Yeah.
I was always really confident about, hey, we're just gonna move on. We're gonna do something else. And fortunately for me, and this brings us back to where we're at today.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, the skills and abilities that I had with photography and cinematography, and I had continued on all that through the fire service.
Was just.
That all just came back into play.
Yeah.
And
I will say this. Okay, so what I really wanted to dive into was you're leaving the fire department. As you're finding yourself at that door, your oldest son, Cody, who I've now gotten to know really well, started having some issues of his own.
right. So
And if you were in the fire department, you would have not been able to be there for those issues.
after Compton, I want to say the dust settled. That's when we were faced with the fact that Cody was diagnosed with cancer, and so the biggest portion of that, or my biggest takeaway, there's a lot of takeaways, and
Yeah.
like I said, I could even say that
That's a whole nother episode.
a whole nother episode of
just
dealing with
cancer
and
having
dealing
a
with
kid.
and being a dad and
Yeah.
being there, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
And
But it's shit like this that makes me look at you like the amount of stuff you've seen, the amount of hurdles that you've had to overcome and just take in stride and go, you have to make the best of this.
yeah. Well, and the thing about Cody's thing was, like I said, the dust was still settling from Compton, and it was a life-changing experience where you're not really able to kind of even take it all in, where you have to shift gears.
Yeah,
And
so you're
now-
going through this crazy, chaotic transition, and then all of a sudden you are blindsided by your oldest son getting diagnosed with something that is almost the scariest thing you can hear as a father.
Yeah, he's diagnosed with bone cancer.
Yeah.
And so you take that on, and the reality of it being is, and you touched on this, is saying, if I was on the fire department and a fireman at that time, would I be able to spend the time and attention that I did with Cody, going through that whole process? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
And because of what I was doing and where I had landed, and to define that is, I really started doing media, marketing, film, TV.
Yeah.
That's when I really got into it, and that's what I was doing full time.
Yeah.
And so when Cody was diagnosed with cancer, I was able to spend every day I could at his bedside there while he was going through this.
Which would have never.
It would have never happened. Or it would have been tough. I mean,
You'd have had a few days. You'd have had some days there.
right, but it would have been tough.
Walk me through how the diagnosing process was. How did you and Sarah react? How did you and your ex-wife react? Like how did the family come together for something that flips anyone's world upside down, much less someone who's already going through a whole lot of instability to begin with?
Right. I think the best way to describe or say what happened was, because of the chaos and the craziness of what
was already
happened,
happening.
it was already there.
Yeah.
We had already kind of formed this bond. And I want to look at it as that's the reason why it was a preparation for this next news. And when Cody was first diagnosed with bone cancer, I think we were already, the synergy was already everybody
was already together.
We're
already
we're
with
formatted.
shields up at the front, ready
we're
to.
there. We're we're ready to go. Although nobody wishes that, or you don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
But we were already kind of had a united front and ready to handle whatever. And then bang, Cody gets diagnosed with bone cancer.
How long did you spend in the hospital with Cody?
Well, initially, so bone cancer is kind of tricky. So initially what they tried to do is they went and removed a piece of bone where they found the cancer, which was a lump on his leg.
Okay.
They went and cut that out.
How old was Cody when this happened?
12 years old when this is going on.
Okay.
They went and removed a piece of his leg and did a graft.
Do you do the whole
allograft.
bone? Do you how?
It's just a portion of it. So
Okay.
they cut a piece of bone out where the cancer was.
Yep.
And then they did an allograft surgery where they put donor bone in where your old bone is, and rods and everything. And the goal was to remove the cancer, strengthen the leg with the allograft and donor bone.
Okay.
And then if it all works right, you walk away from that and you never knew it happened.
Okay.
That was the goal. That was the hope. So we did that. That process was from surgery to recovery was a little bit, almost a year. He was on crutches for 6 months, just non-weight bearing, just trying to just get good from that.
So from 12 to 13.
He was going through this allograft surgery and the bone surgery.
Yeah.
While he was recovering from that, and right at the end, just as he gets off crutches, he had went back for a number of tests, and then they noticed that there was a inconsistency and or a abnormality in his lungs.
Really?
And so it was about a year after his initial surgery, this lung thing pops up. And then they realize, hey, it's possible the cancer has now spread to his lungs.
Mm-hmm.
So they go in and they do a immediate biopsy / lobectomy, take a piece of lobe out of his lungs and biopsy this portion of his lungs. Yeah. And then when they did that, they sent it off to testing. And when they sent it off to testing, they realized it was bone cancer as well. Mm-hmm. And the type of cancer it was one that was come from the bones.
Okay. So
the only way to speculate how you get bone cancer in your lungs is if it had spread from his leg. Mm-hmm. So if this leg surgery had went without a hitch, he would have just gone on with his life and no problem. But because the abnormality popped up in his lung, the only way to combat that, or the only way to look at that, was now to go through aggressive chemotherapy.
Gotcha.
So,
and that's when shit gets real.
That's when it gets real, because now we just went from doing this whole 6 month with the leg and 12-14 hour surgery to now he's getting set up for chemotherapy and high dose chemo. We're gonna knock it out of the park. And so that was about 9 months in the hospital we spent, where the schedule is you go in there on Monday, you get chemotherapy, and then as the week goes on, as your levels drop, then the possibility of you going home is available.
Okay.
So there was some weeks where we went on Monday and went home on Friday.
Yep.
And there was some weeks where we went on Monday and we stayed the whole week and we went on to the next week.
What did y'all do while you're sitting around? To me, I feel like you and Cody now are so super close.
Right.
Real close.
Mm-hmm.
Were y'all that close before that happened? Do you feel like, back to your mentality of just rolling with the best of it, how did that affect you and Cody's relationship?
I think Cody and I have always been close. Cody was obviously my oldest boy, and
Yeah.
Cody, when he was a baby, spent a ton of time with me, but we were always close.
Okay.
Which helped the situation in the sense that since we were close,
Going through that.
being a 13-year-old in the hospital, the last thing I think you want to have or do is be with your parents. But
Yeah.
we made the best out of it. We had
Yeah.
fun. We watched. I say fun in the sense of I know this was the worst time of his life,
Sure.
and I know he wouldn't want to go back through it. But at the same time, the time we spent together, watching old movies,
Yeah.
laughing, joking on the computer, doing things.
Just connecting together in
Exactly.
a time where it's all you can do is make the best out of where you're at. And
When can you spend the amount of time with anybody
Yeah.
that you could spend during that time?
Yeah.
And it was one of those situations where I think we really made the best of the situation. And it was all because we had
that time.
In the mindset. And the fact that we were going to be there and make the best of the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, cancer runs havoc on anybody. Chemo runs havoc on anybody. And it's just to go through that as a person, I can't imagine being Cody going through that, but even as a parent, watching your kid go through that, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And but I would say we made the best out of the situation at hand, given what we were up against. And
And it's also back to it's weird how things happen for a reason. So during that chaotic time in your life, it allowed you to be there for your son.
Right, and that's where I go back to say, hey, I wouldn't trade anything for anything.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade being there with Cody for the fire service.
Right.
And if I had to go through what I went through when the fire service ended to be there for Cody, then it is what it is. And
Yeah.
and I know that was where I needed to be at that time, and that's the attention that I needed to have on the situation. And
it allowed you to give that attention
it did.
in a time where it needed it the most.
Exactly. And I wouldn't trade that for anything else.
Yeah.
And it's one of those times in my life where it's like, you know what? It sucked, and it was an eye-opener, but then again, I was able to go through that because of what I've been through previously in my life, and being a paramedic and doing all this stuff helped me, was in preparation for all that.
And it's such a full weird circle, because then you fast forward 5 or 6 years and some stupid young white kid shows up at a job you're working on, and a few months later asks if you want to be a part of a documentary for pediatric cancer. And you have such a contribution to the message now we're giving out and promoting and delivering hope in the documentary that we're producing.
I mean, it's I always say everything happens for a reason. I'm a full believer of that, and I believe that in life there's cycles, and there's things that we do or things that we go through. It's all on purpose. It's a bigger power. Whoever you believe in, whatever you believe in, it happens for a reason. And I am always trusting the process, and I guess that's why I'm able to always stay positive, because I can trust the process. And I know even if it's not what I want or what I think I need, it's
you know that you're ready for whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's out of my hands, and I'm gonna leave it up to higher powers than me.
Whatever you're working with.
Yeah. And
so okay, then I've got to ask. I got to ask this next big question is you always adapt with wherever you're at, and you're always a go with the flow and make the best of the situation, and you've gone through this chaotic life that is a movie and then some in a lot of different ways. Were you always tatted up through that process? Like, when did all this happen? How was this transition?
I got tattooed when I was on the fire department.
Okay.
When I was young, I mean,
Like how young?
18, 19 years old.
Why?
I was just into it, and it's kind of a product of the environment. It was like,
Growing up in
you
Compton?
know,
Like
no, it's just L.A. art scene kind
Okay.
of. I guess I put it the best in. I was in this article in Inc. magazine where they say, "Why are you?"
he just underhands these types of things.
why
I forgot you were in Inc. magazine.
Yeah. Why are you tatted up? And I think for me growing up, especially, and this brings up a big part of my life, being biracial. My dad's white, my mom's black. You know, when I was in black neighborhoods, I was the white boy.
Right.
When I was in white neighborhoods, I was too black.
Yep.
I never really fit in. It was always on the fringes of being something outside of what's socially accepted.
Yeah.
And so for me, that kind of was like being tattooed was kind of the same thing. It kind of just added to that.
Yeah.
But what I can say is during that time in my life when I got like sleeves and my neck tattooed and this and that, it was.
Because you got leg tat, like you're all over, like you're
I'm
like
pretty much
what we're seeing
covered.
Here is just a small portion of the art
my
that
whole
you
back, my neck, my chest, my legs. I don't know. To me it's a journey, and it's not so much of what the pictures are, but what I was going through at that time in my life.
So is it a remembrance?
It is a remembrance, but at the same time, I'm into art. I'm into
expression
and it was just like, hey, I'm gonna get tatted down, and it wasn't any. I wish there was something more profound than that.
No, but you're softballing it. You're softballing it, and you know it. But what I love the most about it, and we've talked about this because you're the most tatted person I know, and that's a good honor. But the thing that I love the most about it is how you kind of explained to me. Even as the first time we met, like you're an intimidating guy. Like you don't mean, like, you're not an intimidating person when you get to know you. Okay? You're the most genuine person that I know, but from face value, you're very intimidating. And I think that it's so unique for you to have these firewalls, like tats, because you had them before they were cool. Like now a millennial can go get a tattoo and work for Apple or Google as a senior programmer. Like that shit didn't happen whenever you were 18.
It was gangbangers and bikers at that time, and especially neck tattoos. I was like,
exactly.
The threshold was nobody got their neck
Nothing
tattooed.
above the neck.
No, nobody had their finger tattooed.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good analogy. It's a firewall for me, or for lack of a better term, an asshole detector.
Yeah.
There's
like for guys like me, I'll go into a conversation and I have to whittle my way through the conversation to figure out if I even like this person or not. Or more importantly, do they even like me? Am I even, the energy that I'm giving out, is it even being received? Is it even worth my time?
Yeah.
You've set up, maybe not intentionally.
Not intentionally, but the after fact is there's a lot of people that probably don't deal with me because of my outward, how I look, and they might feel intimidated and they don't want to deal with me. Those are the people that I don't want to deal with.
Right. You want to find the genuine people that can see that can really understand who you are.
And it's funny because that wasn't my intention. That's not why I got tattooed, and I have seen that as a secondary kind of thing. And I don't hate that.
I see it as the number one thing.
I don't hate that, but I know going into it or know dealing with it, like, you know, and most of the time people don't even look at what's on there.
No, they're just judging. They're just seeing neck tat, guy got sleeves.
Yeah.
I don't think I should trust him.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
It. Done.
And I like that because I don't want to deal with the person that wants to deal with that kind of level. And so it has become a firewall for me since, and it is what it is. And it's one of those situations where, like I said, I don't think I ever felt like I fit in in life growing up because I was always on the fringes being biracial.
Yeah.
And that was just another added kind
Part
of
of that
part of
transition.
that where I didn't feel like I needed to fit in, so why not? I'm gonna get tatted down and like whatever.
Yeah.
And
And now, when you see you on a movie set, you're the coolest freaking dude in the room. Okay, well let's bring this on home. We talked about a whole lot of craziness that's happened in your life up until the transition into the film industry, which is where you and I found one another.
right.
And I kind of want to go into how you and I met and how our friendship developed and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
cultivated. Because my story is probably a lot different than yours. But right off the bat, I remember I moved to LA. I'm in an environment that I have no clue about. I'm trying to find my way. I'm working a job that's still back in Texas and trying to maximize this unique opportunity of being in the mecca of an industry that I'm drawn to, but I have no access to. Don't know anybody. I have no connections. I have no in. And so I'm getting on Instagram and I'm messaging companies and people and just hoping that I can hook something. And I'm so thankful. I met one of your colleagues, Scott, the owner of Hover Global, was able to hop on a few jobs with y'all. And I remember the first day that we met. It was one of the first jobs I ever got to work with Hover. It was a drone job, do a lot of heavy lift drone work. And sure enough, that was one of the first days. We drove out to the desert north of LA to shoot some solar panels for a Bitcoin mining company that was utilizing green energy
Right.
to mine Bitcoins. And it was a long day. Right off the bat, whenever we ran into each other, you were genuine, you were talkative, and we connected. I feel like right off the
Right.
bat we connected really well. We were on the same frequency. We were grabbing generators. We were setting them here. I was asking which cases. Like we just worked and hustled on the same frequency. But that wasn't the coolest part for me. The best part was the following day. I go home, and I'm talking to my girlfriend, fiance at that time, and I'm elaborating about how incredible the experience was. Like, man, like I got to go out on a real crew and fly real big heavy drones, and there was this one guy there. Like we feel like we hit it off really, really well. And at that point in time, that following day, I didn't know what was going to come about that experience. It was one day I got to work in an experience. I got to work in an environment that I never thought I'd be able to be a part of, and that's all I had at that point. And sure enough, that evening, I get a call from you. I didn't even give you my number. I don't even think we even got to that part in our relationship.
Nope.
But that evening, I get a call from you, and the first thing you told me was how impressed you were of how I worked, but also just how much you enjoyed working with me, and you wanted to call and just thank me for that. That was the first time ever in my life that someone went so far out of their way after a job just to say, shit, man, like, I just enjoyed working with you.
Right.
Like, what you brought to the equation was so enjoyable to be around that I needed to let you know and
Yeah.
tell you how much I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And right off the bat, Marcel Melanson in my book was a totally different person than who I interpreted the day before. Like our friendship from then on is just it blossomed and grown into incredible things that we've accomplished and are going to continue to keep doing. But I don't even know if I ever told you that story.
No, I have never heard that story.
Yeah, like I swear to God, man, it like changed. It literally changed my life on how I even interact with people because I didn't even think anyone even noticed shit
Right.
like that. And yet you had the time and the patience a day later to call me and just tell me how much it meant.
Well, I think that you're a special person, and I think our connection was genuine and this and that. But I'm a proponent of even in life, I don't think enough people in life give people kudos and thanks.
Oh yeah.
And I think we're so busy in what we do in life that we forget those little things that make us human, or that create appreciation.
Yeah.
I appreciated your hard work and your hustle, and so instead of just letting it go, I made a note to say, hey, let me follow up to let you know personally that how I felt. And I think a lot of that comes from the fire service.
100%. And for me, and a reason why it meant so much is that with my background in the oil and gas industry, when you're working and you're hustling with a team, it was always important to me to tell my team members, hey, man, when I see you doing good, I'm going to let you know.
Right.
Because that's the kind of people you want to be associated with. That's the kind of people you want in your life. And so, man, the second I hung up that phone, I knew that you were going to be a part of my life for a long haul, whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, well, here we are.
And so I don't even know if you went into that call knowing the consequences of your actions.
I literally went into that call just wanting to share my appreciation for the hard work that you gave.
Yeah.
And that's just how I roll. It's just I'm a fan of people who do good, and I think that we should celebrate people that do good. And not only that, but there's so much negativity in the world in life that to give people kudos is such an easy thing. Didn't take any money, it didn't take anything out of my day to call you and give you kudos. It was just, that's how I handle business. And likewise, I now knowing you more and where we are now versus then, I know you're a lot like that. And so it was just a little gesture that I just appreciated the hard work and time you put into the vested interest of getting our job done.
Getting the job done, yeah.
And I'm all about that, and I don't care what we're doing. I don't care if it's film and TV or we're
fighting a fire or
we're moving.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I moved you a couple times now. So
real friend, real friend. Yeah.
So I mean, it's just one of those situations in life that I take pride in that. And I just can't thank you enough for that, because what you and I now have been able to accomplish because of that one act is incredible to me. Like the amount that my life has transitioned in an entirely different direction, and the things that I've gotten to experience through you and the enlightenment even. Let's take it on a whole nother level that you bring to the table. Just the way that you've handled life, the experiences you've had are just so different than the experiences that I've had. And to be able to run alongside you and hope to keep up and see how you handle life and listen, and even though maybe we're not too far apart in age, it's almost like just enough to where your experience and the stuff that you've been able to understand in life is totally different than the stuff that I've had to understand. Yeah.
And I've been so thankful that we've gotten to work really, really hard together and accomplish some pretty incredible things in some crazy environments that we never thought we'd ever end up in. But also grow, or you've allowed me to grow as a person, just hearing the stories that you've experienced and how you handle people, even as we work sets today. Like when we're working on a set, the way that you handle talent or a gaffer or a PA is the same. You're so respectful and you're so animated and happy and just proud to be there that it's infectious. It's infectious.
Well, I appreciate that. And I guess I don't see it that way only because I'm just enjoying it.
Right.
I'm just having fun. And my goal is to just get through every day, and if we could have a little bit of fun and lighten the load a little bit and just not take life as serious as it is on certain days, that helps me get through the day.
Yeah.
And if that translates to anybody around me, hey, I'm appreciative if they could pick a little bit of that up.
Well, it is.
'Cause we could all be a little bit less. But,
sure.
And likewise, I mean, your determination and your everything, we could have a back patting fest of this.
No,
all
and I
night.
don't mean to turn it into that.
No, I'm not saying you are, and I'm appreciative, and
Yeah.
I'm genuinely, we've never had these conversations,
No.
and so
No,
turning
I
the
know.
camus on
Yeah,
does
and doing it.
does do that.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, now it still blows my mind that a little under 3 years ago, no less than that, we've only known each other for like almost 2.5 years. Like it'd be less than 3 years. Like, and now I've got my parents coming into town for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
For you, like,
Yeah.
like it's a family thing now.
Oh yeah, and the reality of it is I think where we're at, and as friends, as people, it allows us to grow in our business, and it's been accelerated, but it's one of those times where it's like, hey, you're my brother from another mother type of
it's
thing.
more than business.
And
It's like we're
that's what makes business easy, when you can
Yeah.
like-minded, driven, and we're doing it. And my kids, my family, and we just have been pushing forward. And the reality of it is what a lot of people don't know, or a lot of people might not know seeing this, is the amount of, or the vast variety of stuff that we do in the motion picture and film industry.
Then let's extrapolate that a little bit.
So that's
because
all
I
crazy.
do. I get asked all the time, like, no one knows what I do for a living, and I'm sure you look at like what you put out on any social media platform. Like one day you may be shooting Beyonce in the Mojave Desert, or in the middle of Arizona or something, and then the next day you're hanging out of a helicopter, or the next day you're just playing with your kids in the backyard and waiting for the next job to pop. Like,
it's crazy. I mean, it's the trajectory of the career and what we're doing, and it's just mind-blowing to me at times, and at the same time,
that feels like a movie in its own right. Like
we could spend a whole thing
know.
just talking about
What we've
the
been doing in
TV and
career.
film industry, right? And
Yeah.
how to get in, and what you do, and what actually the positions are, and
100%.
what are all these things are called.
That one's coming.
That's a
This guy is. We're miking him up again. That one's coming. Don't worry.
The whole who's who in the zoo. What's
Yeah.
a DP? What's a camera operator? What's a executive producer? What's an AD? What's this and what's that?
Yeah, because you personally have taught me so much about how to make our business better. Like how to understand the business we're in and how to make that better. Like, obviously I take a different approach. You're a very hands-on creator. You enjoy to be behind the camera. You enjoy constructing the cameras. You enjoy running the gimbals. You enjoy the technology and mastering that technology to create art. But what it's allowed me to do as a director or producer or whatever hat I'm wearing that day is know and entrust that you've got boots on the ground that have so much experience, and not pride. Like, you don't walk around on a set thinking that you're the big wig, or that I guess you just don't tread. You tread lightly. You're so humble about how you handle yourself within your work, but then at the same time you're educating and you're bringing people up around you that maybe aren't on that level yet. And I've always been so drawn to that. I love working jobs with you, because every single one, doesn't matter what my job is, it may be corralling the whole damn thing. You're still teaching me shit while I'm out there, and you're bringing everyone else up around you.
We're having fun, and if it's a 16-hour video shoot or we got in and out in 2 hours doing some interviews, it's one of those situations where everything's different. And
where do you see that going with us? What is your where are you most happy?
Well, I just think that the more that we work together and the more that we shoot, the better we get.
Yeah.
And the more
even
that
stuff like this.
Yeah,
right?
even stuff like this, and the podcast, and I can't wait to see where this podcast goes and what happens with it, and it's ironic that I'm on this side, because I'm usually
you're always
on
back
that
there.
side, back there, and I'm watching the podcast or seeing the podcast from the other side. But I just think that I was having a conversation today with somebody that was a news stringer, and it was the irony of what media and where media is going, and how we used to go to the TV to even get news, and now it's right there on your phone.
Yeah.
Whether
Use
it's
whatever
through
app.
TikTok, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's whatever,
Yep.
that is the new driving force of media. And so what I see, or what's interesting to me, is how we keep up and create this media to keep up with the demand. And I think that COVID has only defined that even more.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
it has made it where people are at home and they're making TV shows just for Netflix, or they're making TV for the web, or there's a bunch of stuff that's happening just for your cell phone experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're shooting stuff in 9x16 now. Like, that is like
it's
unheard of. Like, that was unheard of 3 years ago.
Well, it's crazy today, and the transition of, I want to say, how we create content has changed forever. And the fact that the consumables need to be there like yesterday is changing the way that we shoot, and changing the way that we need to provide this content.
Even produce and deliver that content.
Deliver. I mean, the game is changing right before our eyes.
So do you find that the most exciting part about where we find ourselves right now is that we have the ability to understand that technology at the highest level and apply that with a vertically integrated strategy? I mean, like, as a unit, we can take 2 or 3 guys that can go out and do the work of what used to be 20.
It's crazy to me that it's so accessible now. From just the standpoint of even buying gear and equipment. When I first started in this business, when I was out there stringing, when I tell these stories about shooting on a film camera, the film TV camera or film camera was like $350,000 at that time.
You're not going to keep it in your garage.
You're not going to have one.
Right. And
so,
now you look over your right shoulder and you got 2 Reds sitting behind you.
And the accessibility and the ability to have the high, I mean, you could shoot 4K on your iPhone these days. I mean, that type of accessibility has changed the film and TV industry forever. Changed content creation forever. Who would have thunk? And I mean, I was born in the late 70s. I would have never thought that it's like George Jetson type BS, that I have a cinema camera in my pocket that is a part of my cell phone.
That has higher dynamic range than a camera you had in...
Fun fact, and we glossed over this, but for a period of time before I got in the fire department and I was working at the grocery store, I worked at the electronics store, Best Buy. I sold cell phones. I was the #1 cell phone salesman on
not a far stretch
in the group.
Slinging that Boost Mobile contract.
I was slinging them minutes. But I say that to say I had some of the first top of the line cell phones that were in mainstream. And you know, those flip phones and all that, I had all those. And so for me especially, to see it go from having this flip phone to
all of a sudden
having a cinema device in my pocket where I could shoot, edit, and upload from a cell phone.
Crazy.
Mind-blowing.
So now you have...
Mind-blowing.
Now you and we have this like complete creative flexibility. Like,
I mean, the reality of it is, if you're not out, if your dream is to be a filmmaker, if you're a creator, and if you're watching this and you want to say you're a creator, there's no excuse
that you aren't
out there creating content.
100%.
Because one of the questions I always get is, what's the best camera?
Right. Oh my God.
What's the best camera? What camera do I need?
Yep.
I always tell people the best camera is the camera that's with you.
The one you have.
I don't care if it's a cell phone.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a DSLR.
Kodak,
It don't matter.
Yeah.
If you're creating
Bring
the
the one that you
content,
got.
then the quality is not the issue. It's of course, yeah.
It's wonderful to have 8K VistaVision or
we have these for a reason,
Yeah.
but that's a whole nother
Yeah.
element of creation and production.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because
dealing with it.
that's something that I see. It's a sickness in today's age, is people worry about the statistics associated with the equipment or how to get the next best lens or the next best camera. And the truth of the matter is, just get out there and press the red button.
Well, the reality is they use that as a barrier to creation.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is I don't care what you have. Like I said, I don't care. You could have an iPhone as long as it records video, you can make something out of it.
Absolutely.
And that's always been my philosophy. And although we look behind us
and
we've got all this stuff,
$500,000 worth of stuff.
it's kind of contrary to that.
It's crazy.
But at the same time, I
crazy.
think it is scaled upon your needs.
Yeah.
And I buy equipment, or we buy equipment
Yep.
based on the needs of the jobs
Of the
that we're
application.
doing. And yeah, there are some that you have to level up on, and you have to have the highest quality, and you have to do things on based on the requirements of the client and or the project. But I by far no means say that equipment should be a barrier to creation. And I always try to get that point across whenever I can, because that's the number one question I always get. What camera to buy? Yeah. And then what is it? How do you do it? And like I said, that's a whole nother, I think we spend a whole nother episode on breaking down the dynamics of a film crew and a film set.
Absolutely.
And we get somebody like my brother-in-law Jason, who's a first AD who handles those dynamics.
Yep.
And
he's only done a few things.
Things.
Just a few. No, that's a good idea.
I mean, those are the types of people that I think can speak intelligibly on it
and shed some light on the way the world works in the industry.
But the reality of it is we're in a time, in a place where we are quote unquote freelancers, and we are creating content that is being seen by millions of people. Yeah. And when I can open up, let's say one of our clients is Hyperice, when I can open up a Hyperice ad and see that millions of people have seen it, it's one of those things where how did that come from little us, or how did that?
But it's amazing where you just hard work, dedication, and being just there at the right time, putting yourself in the moment where you can be there in the right time.
Well, and the reality of it is networking and setting yourself up for success. I mean, everything we do, including setting up this podcast, is practice for us.
It is.
And
it is.
Setting ourselves up for making the right and being able to do this the right way is what will get us to the next level and the next level, and wherever options are endless when it comes to those types of things.
Who knows what the heck we're going to be doing?
Who knows?
In 5 years?
Yeah, and we all have our hopes and we all have our dreams, and like quite frankly, personally, we've shot some documentaries and I enjoy that. And, if that's what we did,
be some of those in the future.
Shoot docs, and then that's what we do. And but I guess the message I want to translate, or the message I want to get out there to everybody, and we spent a long time, and if you're still watching at this point, I feel sorry for you.
Shut up.
But it's one of those situations where, hey, dreams and options are endless, and motivation, and you can do whatever you set yourself to. And the reality of it is, no matter how many barriers you're faced with in life, in your career or whatever, I'm just always the one that wants to say, you keep pushing and keep a positive attitude, and
You never know where
you
it'll
never
get you.
know where it's going to lead, and
Yeah.
you never know what's around the next corner. And reality of it is especially when you're dealing with the bad times, it can only get better.
Right.
So
It can only get better
it can
from
only
here.
get better from
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And if you can understand that, and you can be happy during those,
Just keep that positive mindset as much as you can.
yeah,
That's
I mean,
the best way you're going to make good choices.
I just think that your mindset and the ability for you to set the trajectory of where you want to be
Yep.
is up to you. And I have the feeling, and not only my life experience, I'm a young guy, but I've been through a lot, obviously, that we've talked to.
Yeah.
My experience has been, if you let other people or you let that mindset dictate where you're going to go, that's where you're going to go.
That's how it makes you. That's exactly who you're
You,
going to be.
you want to be negative
Yeah.
and you want to blame everybody else, that's where it's going to be, and you're
Yep.
going to end up that way.
Yep.
If you are going to literally take control of the situation and say, hey, this shit, it sucks right now,
Right.
but guess what? I'm going to keep it pushing.
I want to bring up one story that most sinks in for me on this point that you're making now. And that's you and I showing up to the first actual job we did for the Delivering Hope documentary. We traveled into Houston. You and I we flew in at 1 a.m. We're shooting rolling cameras at 3 a.m. We're halfway through the day. We're now in downtown or Galleria area in Houston, filming at a very popular radio station. We're loading equipment in and out. It's just you and I. We are almost one-man banding something that would take 5 people to execute. And as we are finishing wrapping interviews up in this high-rise skyscraper in the Galleria area in Houston, and dragging all the equipment down the elevator and getting in the car, you realize you've lost $500. And I remember the second you told me that, I was like, we got to stop everything and find this money. Like, this is a big freaking deal. And we loaded up the car, and you walked back upstairs, and you took the elevator, and you checked, and I was patiently waiting in the car for you to come down, either that you found your money and you're in a good place, or you didn't find it and like the day's ruined. Like we'd been up for, at that point, like 18 hours. Like we're starting to come down. Like the day is coming, like it's not even noon yet, and we're already burning the candle at both ends. And I thought this was going to be just not a good situation. It was affecting me. I remember I was like, we got to find this money. Like, this is $500 freaking dollars, man. Like, it's affecting me now. And when you came back down, you didn't find the money, and I'm sitting there, like, almost, I was freaking out. I was like, man, this sucks. Like, this sucks. It was bothering me. And you just stopped and were like, someone else probably needed it more than me. And at that moment in time, I was at a place in my life where that happening to me would have ruined my entire day. It happened to you, and it was on track to ruin my entire day. And yet, you making that one statement changed my total understanding on how to approach things, and made me, more importantly, realize the type of person that you were.
Hey.
And I know that's not a big deal. It happens to people all the time. But it was just, for me, it was at a point in my life where I was being affected by it, and it wasn't even my problem. And yet, you look at it and go, it was probably for a reason.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think everything happens for a reason. Whether to humble us or to give us elevation, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And I
know you probably don't even remember the story.
I've
like,
been
it's
through,
such a stupid...
I remember the story.
Okay.
But
okay.
I've been through so much in my life, Jordan, that nothing surprises me anymore. And I can only lift it up to beyond our comprehension, and beyond our control. And some of these things you just got to look at and be like,
all right.
Oh, well.
That's where we're at.
Somebody once told me, don't make a mess out of the message. See the whole picture. Some people just stop at the mess, and they don't realize mess is a message.
It's part of the process.
Is part of the process. And so get
really
the
like
message out of the mess.
Have you been saving that?
I've been saving that one. I ain't
man.
shared that one
I've
with
been
you.
digging shit out of you for years, and you never told me the stuff.
Don't make a mess out of the message, and
Yeah.
take the message in, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Lose money, lose stature, lose this, lose that.
Understand that it's a message.
We're on the right side. We're breathing. We're able to comprehend things. There's a lot of more people out there than us
It would change places with you right now.
trade you with you in a minute.
Yep. Your worst day will
day
always be a day that someone else would want to trade with you.
Exactly. And I don't care if it's the film industry, I don't care if it's the fire department, I don't care what we're talking about or what it deals with.
Yeah.
Is what it boils down to for me is enjoying life every day and translating that to my kids to be in and enjoy life.
Yeah.
And if people can just take a step back from the stress and the rat race sometimes and not lose the message in the mess, I think the world would be a better place. I mean, it would be easier to swallow. And
I agree.
I think if I were to say to anybody, given what I've been through and my knowledge and experience, it's like people take themselves too seriously half the time. And I don't take myself that seriously. I look at life as let's have a good time, and I'm responsible, but I make the best of it, and I'm lucky to have. Again, I have to mention my support network.
Yeah, wife Sarah, family, her parents, like.
Oh yeah, man, that's what makes it all worth it, and that's what keeps you grounded. But at the same time, my outlook on life is because of my trajectory. It's fallen into some times where I know that I could go this way, but is it worth it? Right. What is it going to do? What's it going to change?
Yeah.
How's that going to affect the overall?
Yeah. How's that going to help at all?
It's not going to help.
Yep.
And so,
I love
like
that.
you said, I lost that money. Well, I could have been bummed about it all day, but
again, I was. We were driving out of that parking lot, and I was like, I will go make another run up those stairs.
But instead, we enjoyed ourselves, and we
did.
just kept pushing.
And it was.
And we didn't let it affect us.
No.
And that's how I try to approach life.
Well, now, at least after this conversation, that choice that you make every day is impacting people around you, including myself. And it really has reverberated in my life a lot, and it is one of the big reasons why I'm so fortunate to have you as a major influence on my life, because you really do just make the best of whatever you're given. And that's a true gift, and I can't wait to see where that takes us, because man, do you balance me out in ways that I know I take for granted, and I hope someday I can start returning that favor.
Oh, you already do. We got plenty of projects to come, and the more we do this life thing, the better we get. And so, like we continue to talk about and grow and talk about projects and things like that. It's like you're only as good as your team, and we've developed a team, and we have a team now. Some of us really contributing, others, Karim, just barely holding on, but still part still part of the team.
No, come on.
Still part of the team. He's gonna be he's our guy.
Yeah,
we love it.
But and I appreciate you bringing that up. As we bring this to an end, and there'll be many more. We're gonna have Marcel sitting here in front of the lights.
No.
a lot more to come, because he's got a lot more wisdom and expertise to give, and I can't wait to share that more with you all. But huge thanks to Karim, sound, Reese, cameras, lights, Marcel for giving us the set, all of his equipment. This podcast, this conversation, I don't know where it's going, but again,
We didn't know what we were getting into.
we didn't know what we were
I don't
getting
know
into
how
to
I
get here.
even said it
No,
even in here.
But it's always so surprising to me what I learned through this experience, and then just be able to express to the people that give me the time to be able to yap and not shut up. And so thank you everyone for helping, and thanks for always being you, man. You've impacted my life in ways that you don't even understand, and I cannot wait to see what we accomplish together moving forward. And
Here we go.
This family.
Fuel the jet. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
We're onward and upward, and this is just the beginning of what we got going on. And there's so much that is in the works, and so much that we're just
Good things
starting
to
on.
announce ahead.
Big things to announce.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, brother.
Thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Only that you care about.
Say take 3.
Take 3.